And you're listening to Jesus Christ That's Funny. I'm Ethan Moore.
And I'm Pastor Dwayne Black. Sanctuary.
Yes, the Sanctuary Church.
Yep.
What was your 7-word bio? We did that last time. Let's try to do that.
See, one more time. Let's see. It would be I'm Pastor Dwayne Black at the Sanctuary Church, an inclusive, not exclusive congregation.
Okay.
How about that? That was good, huh?
It's kind of generic. What does it mean?
Inclusive, not exclusive?
Yeah.
That we accept everybody wherever their walk in life is.
Oh.
So wherever you are on a spiritual journey.
Surely not Irishman.
We do, and I wish you wouldn't call me Shirley. But yeah, that's
Irish welcome too. Okay. I am Ethan Moore. I am a local stand-up comic here in South Florida. I'm also used to be a academic. Used to be a philosophy and a religion teacher, and used to be a drug addict. I guess I still am, depending on which 12-step program
you're in.
I'm in. You're supposed to identify that way. But I'm now a comedian
and doing well. And doing well.
I'm doing pretty good. I've been booking a lot of shows lately. I'm on this Butch and Femme comedy tour with Anna Lepoli, my homosexual life mate. I'll put it that way, and my comedy partner,
Dr.
Anna Lepoli.
Yeah.
Yes. We've been doing some really fun shows over the last weeks and months. So you can find out about our next show, maybe near you, at butchandfemmecomedy.com.
What is your other podcast going on?
The Sex on Kava?
Yeah, Kava, yeah.
Sex on Kava comes out every Tuesday and Wednesday.
Oh, cool.
We have 2 episodes out a week, and we record every Saturday at midnight at Awana Kava Lounge in Fort Lauderdale.
At midnight? Really? Wow.
At midnight at the weirdest bar in South Florida.
That is?
Which is maybe, in fact, definitely the weirdest bar in America. I think we can make that claim. Because if it's the weirdest in Florida, come on, right? Yeah, and that is a weird place. They don't even serve alcohol, and it's really weird.
You know, I heard something about them making kava illegal. Did you hear anything about that?
I don't know. I should know. I don't drink it, but I do a podcast from there, so I should know. I haven't heard about it.
Yeah, there was something, and they were talking about that it's one of those drugs that are out there that I guess it's a drink. But they're concerned about it.
Yeah, it's like a tea they make from a root or something from Fiji. So I don't know. I guess they could regulate it that way.
What does kava make you feel like when you drink it? Is it just good, warm?
I've heard people describe it as kind of like an herbal, like Valium kind of thing. Okay. So it's kind of like a little anxiety release.
Okay.
Or also like coffee, but in the other direction. So instead of
that's
bringing you up a notch, it takes you down a notch. But it's very mild, supposedly. Like it's not like opium,
right?
Or something like that, or something stronger. So it's not like popping a Quaalude or a barbiturate or something. It's like it's very sort of herbal and kind of mild.
So you can get this at that bar at.
You can get it at Awana Kava Lounge. Yeah. And Rich Kennedy, who's my co-host on Sex on Kava, and one of the funniest people I've ever met. So that's why it's great to do a podcast with him. He is also a master kava brewer.
Really? Okay. Well.
Oh yeah, he's been to Fiji. He's been doing it in South Florida for decades. I mean, like he worked at the first ever kava bar that existed in America. And he's been a kava fan since before there were kava bars, and he's been drinking it and brewing it on his own.
Right.
So he's just really kind of steeped, if you'll pardon the wordplay there, in the culture and the know-how there.
Right.
So he makes a great kava from what I've heard. Like people say like it's the best taste. There's a lot of kava bars in South Florida. People say it's the best tasting. So check it out. Go to Awana Kava Lounge. It's not far from the Sanctuary Church. The very place in which we sit right now.
Right. Exactly where we sit. Exactly.
Yeah. So enough about kava, Pastor. Last week we kind of ended up talking about all this other stuff, but we didn't get to the topic you wanted to cover.
Yeah, but we also talked about this girl who you overstepped. Maybe you.
Oh, our former news girl on Sex on Kava.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was good. I'm still waiting to hear what happens.
Well, there's been no developments as yet, but I will update you soon.
Okay, yes. Good. Yeah, I wanted to talk about politics because it does seem like the time in the year and things that are going on.
Really? What? Is there something? Is there an election or something? I haven't heard anything about that.
I know you're starting to turn on to it now. I know.
I am. You know, I told you earlier, I try to stay away from it.
Yeah,
Like
but-
every 4 years, I ignore it as long as I can. And I hold
And
out.
now,
And yeah, usually sometime a couple of months, 3 or 4 months before the election, it's just like, whoa, this starts to get really fascinating.
it's calling to you. It's Ethan.
Yeah.
here.
And this one in particular, because with you know who, you know.
The name that can't be said.
Yeah, no, we can say it. Yeah. That's right. John Kasich. No.
Yeah.
No, yeah, with Mr. Trump in the race, it's just like, whoa, this is crazy stuff that I've never even
It is
contemplated,
isn't it?
you know,
Yeah.
in my life as a voter or a person watching politics. So that's pretty interesting. Also, we've got Hillary, first female presidential nominee. So that
Yeah, it's all.
so it's a lot of, it's going to be historic.
No matter what way you turn about
no
it,
matter
yeah.
what happens, yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So I'm watching with bated breath now, despite my best intentions. I'm addicted, man. I'm plugged in.
Really?
Yeah.
I get up every morning just waiting to see what's been said overnight that I can laugh because I keep going. I can't believe this is where we are.
The reason why I think, and me too now, and I think the reason why I try to hold out, it's the same reason I try to hold out from like, you know, like I still haven't seen Game of Thrones, you know, for example, and everyone talks about it, and I'm
Yeah.
like, if everyone, there's a couple of things. Like one thing is like everyone's talking about it. I'm like, well, then I don't want to know about it.
I don't want to.
I'm cool. I want to be different, you know? Like everyone has tattoos. Well, no tattoos for me.
Yeah.
You know, like that's, so part of it's just my contrary kind of nature, but,
Contraire.
yeah, but the
I
other
love it.
the other side of it, I think, is that I think really it does pull you in or I'm worried that it will pull me in an unhealthy way.
Right.
So it's like the same thing, like Game of Thrones. Like, okay, I'm sure that's a great show, and I'm sure if I watch the first couple episodes, now I'll be watching episodes when I should be doing other things.
That's right.
You know, and
I've watched 23 in a day.
yeah, and I noticed this probably the first time I noticed this in politics was kind of around the time of like, I don't know, like the Iraq War and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I realized you see these people, and I went to college with some of them, and I saw them around, and they were the friends and parents of my friends and things like that. And these people that get obsessed,
Right.
where like they kind of their life is their political identity, and they're focused really on like every little thing, and it becomes, you know, you see it now with these people that are talking. It's like Benghazi is there. They're just like that's the most important thing in the world to them is like Benghazi, and like Hillary should be in prison, you know. Or you see it with some of these you saw it a lot with the Democrats and stuff, or the liberals, you know, with Bush, and it's like Bush is a war criminal and he needs to go. I mean, everyone needs to focus on this,
Right.
and I'm like, I don't know, maybe these people have good points, and I don't really know. I'm not the most informed person, but I just think that if that becomes your whole raison d'etre, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah.
Then you're not really functioning at a very high level as a human being, you know. And I'm worried about getting sucked into that even just a little bit. You know, I don't want to be someone who's just like that's what I live and die on.
Right.
Because ultimately, I actually think like politics is like, okay, it's important, but it's not like the most important thing in my life. I don't know.
But we started delving into this this letter from Paul in Colossians, and we start talking about, because there's like this political side to it. He starts using this word gospel, which at that time the word gospel was connected to military. It was that a Caesar, once they took over Britain or wherever, they would have a gospel written. So gospels were this idea of announcing military victory.
Okay.
It was never connected. So Paul writes in, and he's talking about the gospel of Jesus Christ. So he's talking about the victory of Jesus over the empire.
So gospel, the word gospel
Right.
implies victory.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Right. And so, right, the whole idea of the gospel was connected into this military, you just wouldn't use the word. So when Paul starts using this word gospel of Jesus Christ, it was like this victory, and it was implied, and it was treasonous. And so this understanding that
Wait, what was treasonous?
of him saying that the gospel of Jesus Christ and
Oh, it becomes
subverting that word.
So it immediately becomes a political message.
Absolutely.
If you use the word gospel.
Right. It was. And
the kingdom of heaven? Who's the king here? Wait a minute.
Exactly.
What about Caesar?
Well, that was the whole idea.
Right.
So suddenly, now you've got
Right.
this, we're talking about, so he starts doing this whole thing where he's talking about that it is a different, Caesar, you're not bringing the, peace to the world. And Jesus did conquer everything, and he brought peace by giving his life. And so there's this kind of political understanding that faith is connected to politics, that faith, the gospel of Christ, if you're reading it, is connected to politics, but it is not partisan. It's not red or blue. And that's what we get into a situation where we start talking. You can't talk about the realities of healthcare and poverty and education without having some kind of overview that says, my understanding of the gospel is teaching me that I have to respond in these ways, or it at least illuminates partisan sides, so that you say, I'm going to look through the partisan sides through the lens of the gospel of Christ and what I'm being called to do.
The interesting thing about democracy, I guess, is what I'm trying to, I guess is the word. And I just had this thought as you were talking, is that, okay, so we're being asked, what's strange about it is it's like, okay, so I'm this, let's say you're a Christian and you're thinking, well, I'm this moral person and I make all these decisions based on my morality, and a lot of that's informed by my relationship with Jesus Christ or something like that, right? Then it's like, okay, so I need to decide, what to, where should I send my kids for school? Or like where am I going to shop for produce or whatever? You're making these sort of decisions, or how am I going to talk to my neighbors or something, right? But then these are all very personal kind of things where it's like your like interaction with your sort of smaller world, your community, your small community,
right?
But then but here in like a modern giant, international, globally connected democracy like the United States, you're also being asked and also what's the best way to govern? Mm-hmm. And you're being asked this question, which I think, to me, this is like the source of a lot of the political static that we get between people on either side. Is you're also being, it's like, okay, well, how should we decide questions about healthcare and the distribution of wealth and taxation and all that stuff, right?
Right.
And you're like, well, how do I know the right answer? In other words, like, I'm not an expert in government. I'm not an expert in public policy. I guess I can look at what the experts say and I can try to make determinations there. But overall, if you're asking me how to govern, I don't know.
But if you're a Christian and you start to look at these same questions with the illumination of this gospel, you start to look at it in a different way. You start to see, because there's not one group or the other that can claim the gospel. And we do have groups that claim the gospel, and it's heresy, and they should repent.
You mean like for example, the Republicans might say, we're the fulfillment of the laws and the prophets.
The Christians follow us. The evangelicals follow us, and it's like no.
I was raised with that mentality in the Baptist church I grew up in. It was Jesus was basically Republican. You should vote that way.
And that's absolute heresy.
And it strikes me as such. Oh, Pastor, you're punching the microphone.
I did it.
There.
I'm sorry, got carried away, man.
Socking the microphone like a boxer.
It is. It's crazy because I see people out there and you keep saying, how do you not want everybody to have health care? It may not be that you give your life to Christ in this way, but you may have to change the way you live so that other people can live better.
But I guess the where it gets tricky is it's like what you're saying is, okay, so you're saying that everyone should have health care, but then maybe you say, well, that's not realistic. Or how will my vote change whether or not they do have health care? Or there aren't enough resources to go around. Who am I to say how they should be distributed?
Right.
Even if you say, well, I would gladly, and this goes back to like if you listen to the episode with Emily, where she came out and talked about her, because I think there's this sort of disconnect, or you definitely see it as a disconnect, and I'm not so sure, but there's this disconnect that you see between people who are people of faith and then people who kind of might be more conservative in terms of the way, because they're like, well, shouldn't you be voting for programs that would help the homeless?
Right.
or something like that, if you're a Christian. And it's like, well, yes, but she would probably say, but I don't think those programs really do help the homeless. And if you look at it my way, we need to lower taxes and reduce government spending, and then that's going to help less people be homeless or something like that. So it's like she has a way of looking at it where she's saying, my personal political opinion is distinct from how I treat someone when I encounter them on the street.
Right. Right.
And I'm like, more and more, I'm kind of get that.
Well,
I mean, you know what I mean? It doesn't change my political opinion, but I'm just trying to be empathic with.
Well, I think what happens is people start saying,
way people
listen,
are.
The gospel is great for Sunday morning inside this building and inside my heart.
Right.
But outside of that, it doesn't work. And so I can't, I'm not going to take it there. I'm not going to try to justify my vote or what I'm doing or.
Right.
But there's somewhere that we have to start saying, listen, this is bigger than this or this. And that if you have to say, I may have to pay more in taxes so that you have health care, then I'm willing to do that because I believe in this gospel.
But you might say that you're willing to pay more in taxes. But that's a different question of, will I vote for candidate X? Will I vote for Hillary Clinton or something? Because it's like, it is. Because really what you're saying is like, well, maybe I'm willing to pay more.
Right.
But do I think that other people should be obligated to pay more? That's a separate question. I think you can separate them. You might not, but I think that it's possible to. And it's like, I think the challenge here is, it's so funny that I'm just realizing this, but it's almost like I'm saying democracy doesn't work.
Right.
And maybe it doesn't. Because that's the thing. I'm like, well, it's like you're asking every individual person on the street to be an expert in public policy. You need to see what's going to happen if you make this vote or if you make this vote. And it's like, yeah, but I feel like that won't make it. Now, it's very different to say, I'm not sure and I don't know. And and say, I'm going to vote for this guy because I like the fact that he's planning to attack and kill people or something or torture the families of terrorists or the other things that Trump has said, So you're like, to me, that one almost is more of a specific argument than that's more of an argument that I can sink my teeth into, or I would be able to sink my teeth into if I were like a Christian, I think. You can be like, well, this guy's sort of advocating yes, we will do violence against people who have not done violence against us. And if you elect me.
And as a Christian,
so there's almost like a direct, you're pulling a lever and then something happens. It feels like cause and effect. Whereas it's with all these other, up in the air questions should taxes be this percentage or should it be should it be a 1% or should it be a 10% or should it be a flat rate or should it be, tiered? Should it be how redistributive should it be? Is there any point to the supply side guys or the trickle down or, and it's these are questions that you can debate. I might come out on one side or the other, but they're questions that are worthy of debating or that can be debated. Whereas some of these other things with the foreign policy, it's yeah, we're going to go in there and we're going to kill them.
Right.
Even the people who didn't do anything to us. And I'm like, ooh, that one sounds almost unchristian to vote for.
Sounds real unchristian. Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost, so in other words, or we're going to kick out Muslims or something.
Right. That sounds very unchristian.
Yeah.
And so when you have Christians that are going yeah, that's right. And you're going well, wait, what happened?
Yeah. The foreign policy
Where
stuff.
did we lose the gospel?
Yeah,
Where did this disappear from? And
that one's tough.
I mean, I think
for them,
even the even the Catholics, with the Pope, he's writing constantly on a basis of we can't say things like that. We can't do things like that.
Didn't Trump say he doesn't much cotton to the Holy Father?
Yeah.
What did he say? I don't know. He got into a Twitter war with the Holy Father of the Catholic Church.
You're really going to do that, man? Come on, yeah.
I gotta.
But
okay.
But there is. I mean, I deal with homeless people all the time, and you sit and you know that they're in
Gross.
need.
Did you wash your hands before you shook mine? Okay, just kidding.
But you know that they're in need, and you know that you suddenly so Sunday morning you're reading take care of the widows and the orphans and the foreigners, and you're going, how can I read this and do and say I believe in this, and then on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday I don't do that. And if I don't pull the voting lever for people that I say, at least this person seems to be heading more towards this direction, wants this, has a concern about this. But we pull the lever because we're saying, well, this person is not going to raise my taxes.
Yeah.
And it's wait.
And
changing lives.
yeah,
here.
and I think that's where you got to the crux of the matter. Because if you just say like, well, I don't know,
Yeah.
like this guy says, candidate, like the Republican candidate says, if we lower taxes, that's
Right.
actually going to help the poor,
Right.
right? And you can debate that, and like, I don't know, but then the Democratic candidate says, no, we have to raise taxes, then we're going to give them some direct programs. Okay, that's a debate. But if you're voting, and if you're like, I'm not sure on that, I have to decide on some other issue, I think that's fine. But if you're saying, you know what, this candidate says my taxes will be lower, and I don't want to support the poor.
Right. That's exactly.
Clearly that's unchristian.
Right.
Right. Like that's not like to me. I'm like, okay, well, there's a direct thing there, and it's the same thing with like the foreign policy. Like we're going to attack, and you're like, okay, well, this is tough. This is tough to defend. But I do think it's dangerous for us to for anyone. I mean, you're probably a little more liberal than me, and I think it's dangerous I think it's dangerous to go down that road of sort of saying, well, they're wrong or they're unchristian, because I think a lot of what gets counted as these guys are like malicious or something like that, right? If you say like, oh, well, someone who's voting Republican and is Christian is hypocritical or malicious. I think the danger there is like, well,
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
So if you're saying like someone who is a Christian and they vote Republican
I'm not saying either one. I'm not saying partisan.
I'm saying that if you go down that road, right?
Yeah.
Then the danger is that instead of saying, okay, so I think a lot of people they vote that way because they genuinely don't know, or they feel like the answer of public policy has been answered. They're saying like, you know what, this is a pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of a country, and that's another value that I hold. And I don't think there should be all these people on welfare. And I think we need to get back to some traditional values and get people back to work. And I'm like, you know what? Like that's not. I think that's acceptable. You can have those values, and you can say I'm voting Republican for this reason. If, on the other hand, you're voting because you say I want my taxes to go down, and I want those people to be tortured because I think my safety and my wealth is more important than other people's because I'm me,
right?
And they're not. They're only them. And they're subhuman, which is really where that argument eventually goes. That's different. Yeah. So I think you have to draw a line there. Mm-hmm. Now, there's obviously also a place where those two might bleed into each other. Well, so it gets tricky. I think it's really important to be empathic on both sides of that issue, because also this gets to the fact that we have political rallies now where people are screaming at each other,
right? And
you have actual violence happening. And to me, that violence and that mistrust from one side of the other is worse than even the kind of, if you say, oh, it's hypocrisy or something. I mean, that's bad. There's always going to be hypocrisy in politics. But when you actually have Americans who cannot stand one another and think the other people are morally reprehensible.
Right.
To me, that's a worse problem.
Well,
that's the problem to solve.
When we make people evil, and then we start down the road of that we can do anything we want to them. And I think that the idea is that this is not partisan. It's not red or blue. It's larger than that. It's looking at it and saying, in the gospel of Christ that I understand, which person seems to be leading us as a country in that direction, and that's where you start. And you start and you look at it and you say, is this about helping my pocket, or is it really about helping other people and giving them a hand up to step up? And who's going to take us to war? Because I don't understand how you follow Jesus and at the same time say we got to kill these people.
Right.
Well,
you wanted to say it's not partisan.
Right.
But it's political. His message.
It's political. Absolutely.
But you are advocating for one side there.
No, I'm advocating for one side of being the gospel of Christ, that you look at it through that lens, through that light, and say,
which side?
I'm sorry?
Which side?
Both of them. I've looked at all of them.
Which side fits that one?
Well, it's I think that right now one side seems to be heading towards that more than the other. But again, it doesn't mean that they do it. It means that we have to look at these things, and as soon as we
By the way, I just want to take a moment to mention our sponsor, the Democratic National Convention Committee. This message was approved by Hillary Clinton.
Would you agree that America, the United States, is an empire?
Yeah, I mean, it's a yes. It's
Okay,
a
it is an
global
empire.
commercial,
Okay.
hegemon or something like that. Yeah, but it has the function of an empire.
And one of the things an empire does is if you go down a list of what an empire really is one of the things that it does is it doesn't talk with its the people that they are fighting with, because they're the bigger, badder place. I don't need to listen. I don't need to talk to you about how I'm going to come in. We just come in and take over. Okay.
Right.
And the second part is that they don't face their shadow, and that is that they don't face what they've done in the past.
Okay.
So we don't do it in the future. I mean, I think that in the recovery movement, one of the things that you always constantly see, people are talking about their past and learning how to let go of it, but acknowledge it so they don't repeat it in the future.
Yes.
It's the same thing here. We, as a country, we need to acknowledge our past and say, okay, yes, we invaded a country that had nothing to do, didn't attack us, and we've destroyed. I mean, we need to acknowledge the things that we've done in the past.
The last the last candidate for president wrote a book called No Apology.
Yeah.
Mitt Romney. So I don't know how
I
close.
know. Come on, you know.
Well, it is and I think it's just listening to these political pundits talk. You know,
Yeah.
one of the things I've heard them say on I don't know, like NPR and Fox News and all this is like the strategists will tell you one of the things: don't apologize.
Right. Don't. Yeah.
Apologize. You're a political candidate. You apologize. It looks weak.
Yeah.
You're gonna lose.
And so
And you
how
got to
do
win, by the way.
So how do you, as somebody who follows Jesus, and you're saying, okay, I've got to look at this through these lenses, illuminate these two sides with this light,
Right.
and try to look at it in a clearer way, saying that it's not a partisan thing, that politics are deeply involved in my faith.
Well, I mean, okay. I guess one of the things there that makes it tricky is that ultimately, assuming you decide to vote,
Yes.
you're probably going to cast your vote for either Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. I mean, there are a couple of other candidates in the race, by the way,
the libertarians and
and the Green Party.
Yep.
So you could vote for one of those candidates, but you know, if you look at it as the way people, I mean, it seems logical to say, if I want Hillary Clinton to be president, or in other words, or if I don't want Donald Trump to be president, the best way to do that is probably to cast my vote for Hillary Clinton. And on the other hand, or vice versa, right? So in other words, you try to get, that's the lesser of two evils is really
Yeah.
what you're coming down to. So even if you don't fully agree, you know, you're still going to probably, or you can cast your vote with your conscience for like the Green Party candidate or the Libertarian candidate, and then that's almost like casting it for the opponent.
Well, I mean, neither one of these parties actually really want to endorse the gospel of Christ. Neither one of them do. Because wait. Okay, so what?
So
would,
then does
what,
it- so
what
then-
would Jesus say? How do we deal with the terrorists? Would he say, "Let's invade them"? No, he would say, we need to turn to them. We need to give peace. We need to give love. We may lose our life. We may. I mean, that was what he. Not one of the political parties would touch that theme with a 10-foot pole,
Yeah.
or a 100-foot pole. Are you kidding me? No, never. You know. So I mean, so nobody's really wanting to.
Well, and here we get to it again, Pastor. I got to stop you there because I think this comes back to that same thing I mentioned earlier, that theme of public policy versus personal Christianity. Let's call it Christianity, meaning being like a Christianity with a small c or something, like the idea of just acting in a manner consistent with the principles of Jesus, not Christendom,
Right.
not the church.
Right.
So like if I want to behave in that way in my personal life, that's one thing. But if I'm the general of an army, let's say, then I can't say, well, I'm gonna tell all my men to lay down their arms
No, but
before the enemy.
But as a president of a country, you start to say, do we always have to invade? Do we always have to strike back? You know, is this the only way? When 9/11 happened, we talked about it, you know, multiple ways of that America was laid out with being able to reach out to every country around.
Right.
And instead, we struck back at a country that had nothing to do with this. And we still don't own that.
Well,
We
I
don't
think
own
that's,
it.
and to me, I mean, well, this is almost, by the way, who has made, okay, if that's the route you're going to go, I mean, Donald Trump has made that argument several times.
Well,
he said that, why did we do that? That was crazy. And by the way, who voted for that?
And again,
it was Hillary Clinton.
I'm telling you, that's why I say it's not
It's
partisan.
not partisan. Yeah.
It's
yeah,
not.
Yeah. But it's really what it comes down to is stupidity. Also, I mean, like you can make a moral argument against it. You can make a pragmatic argument that's just as strong or stronger, I think, too.
Right.
But of course, then the moral argument becomes we should have just kept propping up Saddam Hussein because we need to have these strong men in the Middle East, and this is realpolitik, and this is the bipartisan consensus that existed for so long, the way that we dealt with the Cold War, and we propped up people that were helpful to us.
Afghanistan, Afghanis,
those guys
through the Russian Cold War until they
turned
won,
on us,
and we stepped away from them, and they were
Charlie Wilson's war, the whole thing there. Yeah, absolutely. So like that's.
Is there a point that we start to think that education and hospitals and things like that that we get involved in trying to lift up and not believe that we're trying to make this a democracy? Again, this empire, one of the first things they do is say, it's got to be a democracy. That's what we're trying to spread. And it's like, well, that doesn't always work. Okay.
This is the most anti-democratic episode we've ever done. I just said I was having doubts, and then you're saying we shouldn't go in these countries. We should not push democracy.
Allow these countries to develop and try to help out with as much humanitarian help we can do.
I don't have the answer. You know what it made me think of though, just when you said that is, so I have this friend Chuck Farron who he and I do a podcast called The Game of Love.
Right.
And I met with him the other day actually, and we're planning to do a new episode soon. So we're talking about this stuff, and we play these German strategy games.
Yeah.
And he told me like his favorite game was like on the computer. It's called Civilization.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
And he said, here's what you do. He's like, here's how you can always win the game. He said, you use democracy to create democracy and capitalism to create wealth and get everyone moving forward. At a certain point, though, all the factions, everyone gets into factions, and you have like this bloodbath. So then, at that point, you come in and you have a worldwide benevolent theocracy that takes over. And so the end game is benevolent theocracy. What do you think about that?
I love it.
Right? I mean, I think it does make sense. No. And I was like, well, can the theocracy be polytheistic? He's like, sure. And I'm like, you know what? If we can have a polytheistic theocracy, that might not be so bad. This is I bet no one has ever talked about this on a podcast before.
Probably not at all.
But I think it's a fascinating idea. The idea that so, in other words, the central concept here is that human beings would be connected to their divinity in some sense that was also connected to their citizenship, but would also be completely pluralistic and accepting of other ways of looking at the world.
Right.
The only thing I would worry about would be what about the atheists? And I'm by the way, I might get swept in with that group because I'm pretty close to being one.
No way.
Yeah. So. I mean, I'm a pantheist, I guess, kind of, but in the Middle Ages, they would have burned me as an atheist for sure. I wouldn't have counted. But yeah, so like you can believe in all these different gods, and we're not going to judge you, and but that's connected into the way that you see yourself and how you vote and your citizen. Or actually, maybe there wouldn't be any voting because it would be a theocracy.
It would be a theocracy.
Yeah, but it would be how you saw yourself in terms of the citizenship, and presumably there would be some sort of mechanism for. Various groups to connect, or various individuals to connect with their needs to the supreme imperial theocratic majesty. We could call him the I don't know, just the big cheese or something. I don't know who, the big cheese of the flying spaghetti monster.
Yeah. No, but I think you hit upon a point, and that is that most of the time when we're talking, the main religions in the world and faith, we're talking about one God, different names, but one God. And most all of them are calling us to be a different type of person, And I think the real gospel of Jesus is revolutionary, and I think it is. It subverts the empire. It says to live a different way.
Pastor, you and your monotheism hobby horse.
That's right.
Always pushing that. Telling you, man, many is better than one.
I know.
One just creates conflict.
We pray to this one for this and pray to that one for that.
That's great, You don't have to. You don't get into these conflicts
That's
because it's like they're all good. They're all fine.
Well, I just think that we're at a point with the revolution of the gospel, and that is that we start claiming it and not allowing people to just run off with this idea that you can say, I'm a Christian, but let's kill these people, and you don't have some struggle.
Hey, I mean,
There should be a struggle there.
there's a long history of that, though. You
I-
know, let's go back to Constantine.
You know?
and everyone after him.
Let's make sure that we acknowledge our
Just
shadows.
put that cross up in front of your troops, and they're victorious.
That's right.
Speaking of gospel, how about that one?
That was sad. And
Proclaim the
it
victory
continue-
of Constantine's forces.
Yeah. It's
You're saying take it back. Take back the.
I'm saying look at it and actually own it. And when we own our history, we won't repeat it, and we won't fly the flag of Jesus in front of us as we decide that we won't say bless the cannons, and suddenly we'll say that's not what we're been called to do. That doesn't seem to be the way God wants us to behave.
Right. Okay. Good luck.
Good luck.
No, it's a great discussion, and I really think we'd like to hear from our listeners.
Yes, really would, please.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
Because we're not going to resolve it here, but
I think we did, but no, it's okay.
I'm telling we resolved it. It's a worldwide benevolent theocracy.